Uh, so about 7 years he's been working with us. And I worked with, no, excuse me, about 6 years. So 2018 was around the time my son was just like born, Cherish was pregnant or whatever. So 2017-ish. Anyways, so I worked with a lot of inspectors. One of the things that I learned quickly that I liked and didn't like was that with most inspectors that I worked with, number one, I'd say about 90% of all inspectors that I personally worked with on my side, who I've hired, and have worked with from representing the seller, talking to them, a lot of these inspectors are really good at blowing up a deal. They're really good at messing an escrow up. And it's not because they want to or they have to, they're trying to. It's that they haven't been trained on communication and they haven't been trained on what to look for from a consumer's perspective. And how do you communicate to your client that something's important, but not detrimental? How do you communicate to your client that these items are going to come up, but that you shouldn't worry about them? It's not worth blowing up the deal over. And every single inspector I've ever worked with has never mastered the art of doing it. Secondly, I rarely find an inspector who is well-versed in a lot of things. It's difficult to find an inspector who's worked on new builds, who has worked on historic property, commercial, apartment, different types of homes. How are they going to be able to inspect a home if they physically have never done it themselves? And it's very hard to find that. Then on top of that, it's also hard to find inspectors that just have general knowledge on a lot of things. And that's where we landed on Alan from the Elite Home Inspector group. I found out that Alan worked with the city of Los Angeles, I think it was, and Alan, you can correct me afterwards if I'm wrong, but worked as a city inspector. Huntington Beach inspection.
Yeah.
So he worked for the city, and he was the guy that they sent out to inspect these properties as they were being built, developed, and he was the guy. And then now years later transitioned into residential real estate, multi-units. This guy has inspected everything from homes that are historic, that are brand new builds, to just traditional condos, high rises, suburban properties, residential. This guy has inspected hundreds and probably dare to say thousands of homes by this point in his career. So that's important. He has, and every single time you hear this man speak, it's like he knows exactly what he's talking about, and the client believes it, he believes it because of his experience. Second thing that Alan does really well is that he understands how to communicate to the client what to be looking out for, what's important, not how to blow up the deal. And this has helped me as a new agent go into this confidently. And I never lost it. I never lost an escrow thanks to Alan over the inspection. I learned how to work with Alan during the inspection. I learned how to create my procedure around Alan so that when he was telling the client something, I knew how to just fill in the gaps to make the client feel comfortable and address what was important. He has that skill. And then lastly about that, he has connections with everything. So in terms of pricing, whenever we need a pricing for certain things to get fixed or repaired, he was able to help us and get connected with that. That is what a partner should look like. So I want all of you, if you guys are working in the Southern California area, you want a second opinion, I want you to reach out to Alan for inspection needs and roofing needs. Or if you're happy with your person, I want you to listen to today's call on what at least you should be expecting from your guy and questions you should be asking your person as they're doing the inspections. And then lastly, if you're out of area, same thing. Look at these expectations that we're setting with clients, what we should be looking out for. So today, Alan's going to be covering, what we should be looking for in home, but he's also going to talk about his experience and how he as an inspector helps my business grow. So this is my really good friend, Alan. Alan, this is the Gabe Mendez group, plus a lot of agents that we work with in business at EXP. So it's all you, brother. Take over.
Hey, Gabe, that was a tremendous introduction, and I really, really appreciate it. I do apologize if you guys are seeing a bit of my steering wheel. I am in my car commuting back and forth through different field assignments this morning, but I am grateful to be here with you guys and be able to share my experience and offer our services. So first and foremost, I'm Alan Ibarra with the Elite Group Property Inspections. I've been with Elite Group since May of 2014. Prior to that, like Gabe said, I worked with the city of Huntington Beach, doing residential inspections for different remodifications to the homes, as far as new developments as well. Some might read my shirt and it says Rocket Roofing. we are once again grateful at the Elite Group to have a multitude of departments to help assist the realtors, the home buyers, and the sellers during this escrow period. We have departments everywhere from our general home inspection, where it kind of all starts, to our sewer division, which does sewer lateral inspections of all the underground and buried pipes. We have a termite division that helps with getting Section 1 clearances for those home buyers and VA loans. We also have our roofing division, which is Rocket Roofing, has a unique name. And the purpose of the roofing division is to help with roof certifications, allowing our new buyers to have a sense of protection over their roof for 2 to 5 years. It also helps with roof renovations, anything from small tune-ups and repairs, all the way to full lift and relays and replacements. Ultimately, we want to be a one-stop shop for all a home buyer's needs during the tight contingency period. So as long as it's according to the California standard of practice within the ethics codes, we do offer those services. Like anything else, you know, one of the things that helped me, and I was mentored and coached early on in my career. You know, you always hear about what is a good deal. You know, what is the definition of a good deal? A good deal is where both sides of that transaction get a bit of their must-haves or all of their must-haves. I'm sure that when your home buyers come to you, and even your sellers, but we'll start with home buyers. When they come to you, they have their must-haves. They may have the size, the amount of bedrooms or bathrooms, the square footage. Are they looking for a big backyard or a no maintenance type backyard? Are they looking for a certain school district? Are they looking to proximity to freeways for accessibility? So those are their must-haves. So you as a realtor, as you're shopping for this home buyer, to find them that house, you have your must-haves. Obviously, in a perfect world, we don't get all those must-haves checked off the box. That's where, you know, husband and wife or the individual will compromise. They're going to say, well, it doesn't have all my must-haves in regards to size, square footage, amenities, location, school district, etc., but it checked off 5 of the 6 boxes. So it's enough to move forward, because nothing in life is perfect, individuals or real estate property. The same thing, we have to condition the home buyers when it comes to the condition of the house. What are your must-haves? You know what I mean? Some people base their must-haves off of cost. Doesn't matter what it is. And I always give the analogy, I can come and say the electrical panel, it shows evidence of overheating, there's sparking, this panel's hazardous, it needs to be replaced. If I left it like that, everybody's going to freak out. But then the client starts to ask, because the first questions they get asked after the initial observation is, how much? You know what I mean? They're going to make their decision based off of how much. If I told them it's $500, it's a big amount, but if I told them 5,000, they're going to be paying a lot more attention to it, regardless of what it is. One interesting thing I also find with home buyers is if they walk into a house, they'll be like, I'm going to change the color of the paint. I'm going to hire somebody. It's about $1 a square foot on average, you know, 2,000 square foot house, do the paint math. Same thing with flooring, $6, $7 sometimes, labor material for floors, 2,000 square foot house, do the math. So they are perfectly fine doing renovations like paint and or flooring, or purchasing new appliances, washers, dryers, refrigerators. Those items are all in the thousands of dollars on average. However, if you tell them the water heater doesn't work well, or if it's at age and it's $1,800 or $2,200 to replace, somehow that is unfathomable in most cases. They cannot see themselves purchasing a $2,000 water heater, but they can see themselves buying a $2,000 refrigerator. So there is a little bit of disconnect there. We've learned over time that there are what's considered staples. What is the expectation? People expect hot water. People expect a roof that doesn't leak. People expect a foundation that's not cracked. Everything else is preference. People enjoy spending their money on preferences, things that are going to fit their design, their style, and their particular needs, things that they're going to interact with. They don't want to spend money on replacing windows, you know what I mean? And or replacing a furnace or air conditioning. They expect the house to be conditioned. They expect, once again, a non-leaky roof. They expect to not have signs of wood deterioration. So for us as inspectors, we always try to focus in on those main points. You know what I mean? Once again, for us, it's touch the elements. How's the foundation? How's the principal electrical? How's the roof and foundation? How is the HVAC? From there, it's really, you guys are going to know your client more than we ever will. Most of the times I see names and email addresses, and I don't get to meet the individual until the inspection. And we have a very short interaction, maybe 15, 20 minutes during an overview when we're talking about specific things. So it's always important. And I think it is helpful as a realtor. It makes things go smoother, is also getting that, what are your must-haves regarding the condition? Because then as the inspector, and even you at the end can say, these were the must-haves. Can you make sure these ones are in good standing? Now I know what your client wants to see or hear or know about. So I can say, hey, Gabe or Cherish, you know what I mean? These are your punch list items of concerns. I can, say that all these items are good with exception to possibly this one, or I can say, proudly, I can say all of this is fine. However, I did notice a loose toilet and or water heaters working perfectly fine. Data tag says it's only 5 years old. However, it's missing a condensate drain line, several $100s to replace, not imperative, doesn't impede the way the water heater is going to function and work. More of a technical thing from the installer and the city. Get to it with, your discretion at your own time, not high priority. But it allows us then at the end, because as a home inspector, people hire us because they want to know what's wrong with the house. And home inspectors are going to provide the clients what they want. They want to know what's wrong. So you may get, too much of what you ask for. You know what I mean? You get too much of this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, but without actually looking at what's going to be important to the individual. So honestly, it's a method that's not practiced very often and or discarded. I've done thousands of home inspections. I think the last time I took count was like 4,800, just to kind of round it off. And once again, I don't see a lot of realtors utilizing that same punch list in regards to, oh, this guy just got jacked. Now they're fighting in the street. Man, I love LA. Sorry, I'm in my car. They're literally boxing it out like 30 feet away from me.
Prove it.
Anyways, yeah, dude, serious. Full-blown rumble. They ran out of an alley holding some tools and two guys chasing them. Anyways, once again, I see the punch list with the must-haves on the actual house. I never really see it based off of the condition. I think that is a strategy that's going to be useful because it allows the client in the moment to maintain their expectations and their clarity. Because, when they're in the heat of the moment, walking around the house and they want to know every little thing that's wrong with it, it could feel overwhelming. If you start to look at each individual suggestion, you're going to notice that each task is relatively simple. We also want to maintain clarity and expectation in regards to no house is perfect. I always remind them that even as a professional, I can invite them into my personal house and show them the things that quote unquote would be in my inspection report for correction, even though it doesn't alter the way my family and I, use and enjoy the space. I always remind them that it's pretty clear to say that I can go into their house and find items that are less than perfect as well. So we just want to make sure that we're still managing expectations in regards to the condition. I think having a punch list of what their conditional must-haves is helpful because as the home inspector, realtor, and client, we can recite those must-haves and then see where the compromise is and say, like, all your must-haves are met, you know what I mean? And all the other stuff is the miscellaneous. And it allows them to say, you know what, you're right, and not be so bogged down on all the little specific details. When it comes to inspectors, every inspector is different. Every human being is different. Elite Group, we staff 52 inspectors right now. All of them have different personalities. Some of them are very straightforward. A lot of them are more informative. They're going to talk to the client as a friend or a relative. They're going to be more hands-on, and they're going to put more perspective and insight. So once again, it really just depends. I'm not going to lie. When I started my career 11, 12 years ago, I was in my 20s and I'm tattooed. I was working in houses that were multi-million dollars in Rancho Santa Fe, Rancho Penasquitas. People were buying $8 million homes. They didn't want a 24-year-old kid, even though I was a licensed contractor with city inspection, under my belt. And I actually had more credentials than some of the older guys who got into home inspections later in their career after maybe, moving from a construction background to a home inspection background. It was that perceived, you know what I mean? It was just that perception. So I noticed myself talking to sometimes to people, and they will look at me and say, I don't know if I feel comfortable around you, even though I knew exactly what I was talking about. Not only can I identify it, but I can actually take it apart and put it back together. So there's always that perception. Each client, if you have a client that has, that perception, we really need to know that in advance so we can try to pair that inspector to that client. Some people will tell us, they'll call us and say, we want to know everything, let loose. You know what I mean? I don't want to lift a finger when it comes to the condition of the house. We want it to be perfect. So we know what the expectation of the client is, and we're going to make sure that house meets their expectation. Other clients are, I only care about the big items. We only want to care about the major utilities and foundation and structure. So we know that those are the areas that we want to focus our attention on. So once again, as much information that you can relay to us about your client's expectations, it really helps a lot. And then just moving forward, the rest of it, once again, is just, I use a comparable analysis. It's kind of when you appraise your house, there's 3 different methods of obtaining value, sales approach, cost approach, and income approach. Sales comparison is by far the most widely used and regarded because it gives you a clear picture. I don't have comparables to show the client in regards to like, hey, here's this inspection report I did last week or yesterday, and this one's from this morning, to show you that all these other houses are literally in the same condition as yours. You know what I mean? So we don't have that comparable measure, but me as a home inspector and us as a home inspection industry, we have that comparable measure in mind, you know what I mean, through muscle memory, because I know that cracking ceiling that somebody now thinks is structural is nothing more than a drywall seam, that needs to be fixed cosmetically. But for them, they might have seismic issue. I can't whip out a phone or a computer and show them all the other houses that have the same defect. Same thing with the stucco, internal condensation in a window. It's hard for us to show everybody like these are mass produced. They make tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of these. It's a condensation issue from a thermal gasket on the urethane seal. I said it's unfortunately common. It's basically cosmetic. The window's fogging. At its worst, it's going to be lacking thermal admittance. Basically, the gases that are inside the window are no longer going to be reflecting that UV. So I said, other than that, it's a couple $100 fix. It's not really a big deal. If you have 30 windows in the house, for 1 or 2 to maybe have that conditional defect. So once again, we use the comparable, analysis to determine whether or not they're having a unique circumstance or not. And the rest of it's just on the condition of the house. Just like the realtor, we have our own checklist. We report on what's good, what's bad, and what's in between. So we go room by room, area by area, and we basically do a check off. It's like a water heater. You're gonna have your water heater, you're gonna have your seismic straps, you're gonna have a TPR valve, you're gonna have an overflow line, you're gonna have a gas line, a gas valve, a drip leg or sediment trap, a base pan, then you're gonna have your vent collar, your draft hood, your fire stop. So a singular item like a water heater is actually broken down into multiples. So you can find an area of concern with one of the features of the water heater, but it not be the tank itself. And you always have to be clear about that to the client. Like, hey, this is an external feature of the tank, doesn't change the fact the way the water recovers, the circulate, etc. But this is our areas, that I have to bring to your attention. When it comes to the agent visual, we get questions regarding that. For me, the agent visual, and I've always learned this, is don't use adjectives. You know what I mean? Big, small, wide, large, because that's up to perception. It's normally just, if you see cracking or chipping, just put cracking or chipping. And obviously you want to stay superficial. You don't want to present yourself as a professional, so the broader and lamer you can be with your description as to the condition that you're observing is good, to be honest with you. Other than that, yeah, just stick to the surface. Don't talk about mechanical stuff. Don't talk about how things are operating or not operating. Don't recite a home inspection or information that that might be a defect. Let the home inspector call that out, because if they're wrong or right, it's going to be their responsibility to fulfill any obligations related to that condition. At the end of the day, the home inspector is taking on and, assuming liability and responsibility for the condition of the house and all of its components. The home inspector does have to follow, industry standards, and they want us to be generalist as well. So, for example, if we turn on the thermostat, we set the temperature down, we notate that we are getting airflow from the registers, but we're not getting a temperature change that would be considered reliable. We don't start taking apart the air compressor and the coil box and doing compressions check. We have to simply notate air compressor was not working during time of inspection. We recommend further evaluation by a qualified technician. And we have to leave it a little bit broad as well, because a technician can come out and determine what that root cause is. And then there might be options. And then that buyer, homeowner, can consult with that technician as to what is going to be the best fit for them personally. So once again, when it comes to the general inspections and the sorry, I'm getting phone calls coming in as well, and the agent visuals, the broader the better. What we want to know is what is the overall condition of the materials and appliances, and what is their overall operational features, and just once again leave it from there.
Amazing. Alan, I think maybe we lost you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm coming back. Sorry,
Yeah,
the
Alan,
truck shut off.
if you want, Alan, what helps during these calls, if you place your phone on do not disturb, you won't receive any calls or messages during the time.
The problem is I have the 800 number forwarded to my cell phone, and I can't put the 800 number on non-disturb.
Got it.
So yeah, I get about 60 to 70 calls a day right now. It's been the average.
Got it. And just for a quick second, if anyone has any questions, I know we had about half of you jumping after we got started, but just as a quick reminder for everyone, we have Alan Ibarra from Elite Home and Property Inspections. Alan Ibarra, I've been working with him since 2017. Like I told everyone at the very beginning of the phone call, it's important to have a home inspector partner who has experience with residential property, multi-units, luxury, high-rise condo, traditional single family, historic homes that are built in the 1800s, early 1900s. You want an inspector who has all of that experience. Alan has that experience. And number two, you want an inspector who is trained on how to deliver news to your clients without blowing up the deal and canceling escrow. A lot of times inspectors have the untrained lack of communication skills where they tell your client something and they blow up the entire deal, and now you have to fix it. So Alan is talking to us today about that. And he's also talking to us today about properties in general, what to be looking out for, how to work with your clients. So if you have any questions throughout the process, stop him and ask him any questions as he's talking about it. Otherwise, he'll just continue to let you know everything we asked him to teach you today. So you should be listening to him today so that you know how to work with your client. You know what you should be expecting from your home inspector. And if you need a second opinion and you're located in Southern California, contact Alan because that's the area that he services. Alan, just so you know, we do have people that are from Iowa, Texas, and I believe one more state, Oklahoma, on this call.
Awesome. Welcome, guys. Appreciate you guys being here with us. Once again, I mean, for me, moving forward, something that, we've kind of developed and I really want to stress, it's getting that must-have list. Your client doesn't come to you and you don't show them every house available on the MLS. You narrowed it down to their purchasing power. You narrowed it down to the specific expectations as far as amenities, bedroom counts, bathroom counts, school districts, proximity to transportation, etc. Same thing with the condition of the house. If we can narrow it down, it's going to be helpful, because just like the MLS, there is a variety of things going on within the house. It's going to help manage and maintain those expectations with the home buyer. So even, once we can go through that checklist, and each one's going to have something unique that, that they're going to want or expect. That way you're not wasting your time with your home buyer either. After the inspection summary, it's not guessing as to whether or not it meets their standards or not. It puts the power back in your client. We're here to provide a service, to our clients, from finding them the right property to closing their loan to making sure that the property condition meets their standards and expectations. I would highly recommend, even a branding checklist. I think clients would appreciate the fact that you care about their opinion enough, and that you're working towards satisfying their needs, their desires, their wants, and that during the inspection that your preferred partner and vendor is also working at, directly looking at those particular items. And then it also, once again, just gets the focus right back to where it needs to be. These are the important items to you. These are the conditions that were reported back for those items. The rest of it was those, non-needed, so non-negotiables. So as long as we can kind of stick to that, that is a new trend that I really want to start. We've started. It's a new trend that I really want to see take off. I think it would help everybody involved set expectations, clear expectations, and just kind of go from there. The condition of the house, once again, is going to be variable to the homeowner's maintenance and to the age of the property. What matters most to us, once again, because we don't have authority. It's not like the appraiser. I can't go in there and find something wrong with the house and then hold up the loan. It's non-contingent. Somebody can grab our home inspection report, throw it out the car window on their way home, and close the deal the next day. The appraiser is going to be a separate story, depending if you have a VA or FHA loan, roof certifications, and termite clearances may become a factor. But when it comes to knowing what the minimum requirements are, they're pretty straightforward in Southern California. Smoke alarms in every bedroom, smoke alarm on each floor if you have multiple floors in the general location, and a carbon monoxide to accompany that smoke alarm in each general location on each floor. We need the water heater strapped. FHA needs a working oven and range. And we need an actual heat source. And wood burning fireplaces in California alone are not considered adequate heat source. Portable heaters that are plugged into the wall are not considered reliable heat sources. It has to be permanently mounted and affixed. And that's basically it. And then once again, FHA VAs are going to be a little bit stricter. No broken glass, no evidence of water damage or microbacteria, and no missing lock sets on the exterior doors. So even when you're shopping the house, with your buyer to see if it's even one that they're interested in making an offer on, you can casually see those items. Maybe sometimes not the furnace because it might be in the attic, but the smoke alarms, the broken windows, the missing lock sets, the evidence of mold or microbacteria or water damage, those already are going to give you a preliminary understanding if it's going to meet the general lender requirements. And then, like I said, everything else is preference. Houses in California are sold as is, where is. A home inspection is, it's waivable from the home buyer, if I have to be completely honest. It's part of their due diligence. They can sign off and say, we want to make our offer look strong. We're going to waive the home inspection. Some might still do the home inspection and just waive their ability to ask for credits or concessions, but they still want to know what the condition is, but they're just basically waiving their ability to ask for credits. And some may just not want to deal with it at all. So once again, a condition of a house, they don't have a set guideline. It's all based off of the individual buyer, as long as we're meeting those lender requirements, then everything is kosher. The rest of it, once again, it's going to be preference. And that goes back to, can we have a punch list, of your non-negotiables as to what you want this house to be in, and then from there, if you notice that punch list comes back to you even before the home inspection is scheduled, you're gonna be like, wow, this is an unrealistic buyer. You know what I mean? Their expectation is this condition of this house is way outside of what reality is. Same thing if they're like, I want a house in, Del Mar, I want to spend $500,000, but I want a single family detached. They're not even going to get a condo there. So you already know you're wasting your time. And it also allows you to talk to that individual and, you know what I mean, manage their expectations and then kind of get them back in line as to what the reality is going to be. Same thing with the house. If you get a large punch list of some unrealistic, you know, expectations, it allows you preemptively to start kind of coaching them into what reality is, and then kind of just have them pick, you know, a dozen items and then use those dozen items as their must-haves. And that'll be the focal point. For the most part, I want to say all inspectors are going to be the same. And the only reason I want to say that is because our scope of work, as it's outlined by INTRNACHI, NACHI, and CREA in California, you know, we do have all of the same requirements that we need to be reporting on. Once again, how well and effectively it gets reported on is based off of the experience of the individual inspector, you know. So for the most part, they're all going to touch on the same elements, you know, with the same restrictions as well. But my main takeaway, once again, I'll keep repeating it, is let's really create a new trend where we're managing buyers' expectations by getting those non-negotiables when it relates to the condition as well. I think that's going to help things a lot.
Yes, I love that, Alan. Thank you so much. I think for sure we're going to start implementing that because it's important to have expectations set, especially for us that deal with a lot of first-time home buyers. If you're taking them to a home inspection, well, number one, they're always going to look to you for guidance. And number two, if it's their first home purchase, they're not going to know what to look for in an inspection. So to have that checklist and have them point out what's important to them is going to be key. Alan, I do want to go back and just revisit what you said, which were, I think, the four like fundamentals of an inspection, which was the foundation, electrical, HVAC, and what was the last one?
We put roof.
A roof. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So then that means once we have this checklist created, even if it's not created, if these four things in a home inspection are perfect or pristine or, you know, need minimal work, and the inspector says, oh, you know, these four things are good to go, then it's like a slam dunk inspection. And that's super important to know.
Yep.
Perfect.
That for me is,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, that for me is the basis and the premises of the entire evaluation. Because if somebody, you know, if we go in there and they say, here's an address, here's the lockbox, you know, help yourself, you know, give us an inspection report. We're just, without consulting with the buyer, knowing what their expectations are, they're going to get a long chest list because we want to make sure we don't miss anything. We've had picky clients, you know what I mean? Where every minuscule observation needs to be reported in red because they want to bring it to the attention of the home seller. Once again, that's their prerogative to do so. Our job is to identify those items and put them into perspective, whether it's a complicated issue, a costly issue, or irrelevant to the entire function and habitability of the house. Other than that, the home buyers are going to determine whether or not that's going to be something that they're going to attach themselves to. So, you know, once again, sticking to lender requirements, getting a punch list of the non-negotiables for the condition of the house, I think would be a great feat in managing expectations, because we don't want to lead clients the wrong way. As a home inspector and as a real estate professional, we don't want them to have the expectation that the house is perfect, you know, and it's going to be without flaw. Because once again, that without flaw, and I see a lot of people with different, conditional standards. I can walk into a house and think it's filthy, and I can see that the entire occupants of the house are perfectly fine, you know, even though there's literally cobwebs on the ceiling and, people have a different standard of living. So we don't want to say anything that's going to be insulting either. You know what I mean? Because if I say, first and foremost, as the home inspectors, we're not really going to be discussing, the aesthetics of the house. So paint colors, the type of flooring. We're only talking about the conditional issue. What is the condition of the walls? What are the conditions of the floors, etc. But a home buyer may want to, persuade us into putting those items into the report, because realistically, a lot of individuals are using their home inspection report as a vessel to renegotiate terms, credits, and or concessions outside of what that's the intended use for. The intended use of the home inspection is nothing more than a disclosure, of what the condition of the house is. It's meant to be nothing else. But we already know they're using the home inspection reports to try to renegotiate terms and agreements. And sometimes it pins the home inspector in a bad light because they say, well, you put this in the report. Well, that's an observation. If the toilet is loose, we're putting the toilet loose. We're not making it a big deal because it's a $10 wax ring. If you're going to hire a professional, maybe a $175 to $225 service call. But we have to outline it in the report. But if the client wants to attach themselves to it, let's just say I had a client, I didn't think it was a big issue, but they had a complex because maybe they experienced a similar issue in their previous house. Maybe they had a toilet that was loose on the second floor, and every time they flushed the toilet, water was leaking from the flange and it caused water damage to the joist. They already went through that experience and it called their home warranty company. So now you mentioned that this toilet is loose. It reminds them of an experience of a property that they occupied or owned previous. So now they're attached to that defect, even though I'm like, dude, just, let's just tighten this thing down really quick. So once again, it's all about the individual and managing the expectations.
Awesome. Thank you, Alan. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, before we wrap up. No questions. Oh, I think.
What were the 4 fundamentals? I'm sorry, I missed that.
So for us down here, I'm not sure. I can't see if you're from out of state. In California, because we get a lot of seismic movement, it's going to be foundation. We don't get a lot of wild weather, but people don't like spending money on roofs for some reason. They consider that a staple of the property and they have an anticipation that the roof is going to look decent from the ground elevation and provide them years of, service life. Thirdly would be HVAC. We do enjoy our air conditioning. So heating and air conditioning is going to be very important. And then the third would just be main utilities, not the light fixtures, not the switches, not the outlets. How is the breaker panel working? And what kind of wiring do we have? We had wiring from 1965 to 1973 where they went into aluminum. And the aluminum was found out later on to be very brittle. So there's areas like Oceanside and Carlsbad, in areas in Orange County like Cerritos and La Palma. These developments and these communities were built right within that time frame. So we'll notice houses that have aluminum wiring, and then there's a lot of times insurance stipulations that they don't insure the electrical portion of the house with that type of wiring. So then it requires an electrical certification. There's other building materials, like we get areas that were built in the mid 80s and they had polybutylene plumbing. So PB plumbing actually didn't have an issue. The shark bite connections did. Shark bites are still available to this day. However, they went from plastic to brass. So PB plumbing from like 85 to 91 was experiencing a lot of issues. So how people who are purchasing houses within that effective age, we got to look at the plumbing to make sure that, it's meeting all the standards. We have formaldehyde in drywall from 96 to 2003. There's a lot of the old Zinsco panels that were manufactured, right around the Second World War, all the way up into the early 60s. All houses before 1961 in Southern California were non-grounded. So obviously people are replacing the outlets in these older homes, but not the electrical conductor. So we're seeing a lot of non-grounded or reverse polarity outlets. So we want to make sure that those big key features are addressed, and not that they have a loose light, fixture, or the dimmer's not working, or the ceiling fan's a little bit wobbly, etc. You can pose any one of those as a health and safety. The fan's wobbly, it's overhead, potential for hazard, easy. I mean, you can almost scapegoat anything as a potential for hazard realistically, but the main fundamentals are going to be utility. What are the main shutoff valves? What does the water pressure look like? And what are the distribution lines and drain lines? Are they old clay and cast iron, or are they newer ABS, PVC, copper, et cetera, et cetera? If you have a leaky faucet, once again, it's a faucet. You know what I mean? It's a feature of that bathroom. You swap the faucet out. You don't need a whole plumbing repipe for it. So plumbing would be encumbered under main utility source. If you have a bad switch or an outlet, you replace that you isolate it and you replace that individual item. And then, so that would be kind of the main elements.
I just want to say, I
Foundation.
love that you explain all of this, because a lot of inspectors don't. So when you do this to our clients, it gives them like a lot of peace of mind, because you're very informative and you know your stuff, Yeah,
because realistically, if I tell them like, hey, you have aluminum wiring, but honestly, so does your neighbor, so does the other neighbor, so does the whole community. Basically, the whole city of Oceanside has aluminum wiring. You're not on a boat paddling the ocean on your own. It was literally industry standard at that time. Another thing that we have to maintain in perspective is that our building codes change. Every 3 years, we get amendments. rules and regulations and standards of practices that were being enforced 3 years ago may get dropped. They may get provisions added, or whole new provisions may be incorporated. So I could go to a house and inspect it, and then 3 years later come back and find out that potentially one of my previous recommendations is no longer a valid recommendation because it got superseded to new opinion based off of the development of that particular material or that material installation, et cetera. So the construction industry is ever evolving, and that's another thing to keep in perspective, because if I go into a house and I tell them, hey, you got polybutylene plumbing, the house was built in 88, you know what I mean? I said, I have to report this back to you because it's a part of my scope of work. However, if the house has, most of the failure was really early on, you know what I mean? Like the Zinsco panels, if it hasn't failed after 50, if you have a Zinsco panel at your house 50, 60, 70 years later, it wasn't one of the defective ones. It's super obvious. The ones that had problems are long gone, but nonetheless, because there was public information already published and produced, like class action lawsuits, we have to report it, but we have to tell them, hey, this is a very common panel for its era. It's very likely that a majority of the neighborhood is going to be wired with this distribution panel. Once again, based off the information that we have right now, and what I'm physically seeing, like the Zinsco panels with the aluminum bus bar. Same thing with aluminum. It's not copper. It's not as dense. It's going to overheat it. So I already know why they recalled it. I know what the source of the problem was. It's not just the name. The name wasn't the problem. The problem, or the breakers, it was the bus bar. So I can be like, I know the root of the problem. You have this panel, but the root cause is not present or prevalent in your panel because your aluminum bus bar looks perfectly fine. If I see scorching, then I can say you have a scorched bus bar. We're not going to recommend the replacement of the bus bar. We're going to recommend a full panel upgrade because, it would be classified as a defective panel. So it really, really helps us to really know not only what the rules are, but why the rules exist. So once again, that goes back to the individual inspector and how much they want to inform themselves and educate themselves, because most inspectors are just going to go in there and see, a Zinsco panel and say it needs to be replaced because they memorized the name. They're not even going to know why it was even, recalled, and or be able to shed any light as to, whether that conditional issue is present within their, particular panel. They're also not going to tell you that Zinsco was purchased by Slovenia and they continued in business until the late 70s with using the same equipment, just under a new name. So it's just, once again, it's all up to the individual inspector to be educated and know what the hell they're talking about and relay that information properly, because we need this information to get back to the homeowner, but we need it to get back in a manner that's going to be received more educationally than, in enforcement wise. Sorry, I know I kind of rambled on that one.
No, that's perfect. So I just put Alan's information in the chat box. I'm also going to be sending it via Slack, so that if you guys need inspections, you can go ahead and contact him or the company. As Gabe mentioned, we've been using him for 7 years and we have never, ever, ever had a property fall out of escrow because of inspections, just because of how much of an amazing job him and his team do. So
And it's not because we're not inspecting them. It's because we're providing very reliable information back to the homeowner.
yes, just like Elizabeth said, so much value. This is the kind of value that he gives the clients. When our clients are there, he's providing this much value and breaking everything down to them. So thank you so much, Alan.
Yeah. Alan, so yeah, I think Alan has to go now. I think we're finished with it, but I do want to stay with 5 more minutes for the rest of everyone on the call. I want to just let you guys know exactly what it is that we say here with the client after Alan leaves, if things were to come up. So Alan, do you have any final thoughts or anything at all? Team, does anyone on the call have anything for Alan? We put his contact information down below.
Perfect. Once again, appreciate the opportunity to be here with you guys this morning. I'm not going anywhere. So if there's any additional follow-up questions, I'm sure we can do a meeting or I can participate at a later time.
Let's see. No questions coming up. Perfect. 3, 2, 1. Forever hold your peace. Awesome. Cool on. You're free to go, man. Thanks for taking the time to do that on today's
Thank you,
call.
Gabe.
You guys have.
Bye, guys.
So, all right, everyone. So let me just kind of tell you a little bit, just quickly, what it is that we say and do with it, just so you know how we handle it. Once Alan's finished talking to the client, giving them a tour at the very end of the property, we sit down, we meet with the client right there. The inspection period, the negotiation should not go beyond the inspection. You should know exactly what items you are requesting. The request for repair should be drafted as you're leaving the inspection. Unless the only time it should go beyond it is if there's a secondary inspection. Let's say Alan says, get a plumber out there, get an HVAC company, get a termite company. If he says do that, that is the only time we go beyond it. And that is the only thing that's pending. Otherwise, everything else should be handled right there in front of the client. So what does that look like? You go with your client, then they show up for the tour. Alan gives them a property tour of everything. Here's everything that we're finding. And it's going to sound like a lot. And at the very end, when Alan's finished, this is what you, the real estate agent, should do. You should sit there with the client right when he's getting ready to leave and say, okay, Alan, so before you go, I have one more question to ask you. This is literally what I teach the agents and how we do it. I have one more question to ask you. So just to recap, how's the overall roof condition? He's going to say, oh, the roof is in great condition. It just needs this one item that I talked about. Cool. So just this one item on the roof. How's the foundation? Oh, foundation's great. Just there's nothing wrong with the foundation. 3, how's the plumbing? Oh, plumbing's good. Just the only thing that I mentioned was the leaky faucet or the bathtub that's the ring stopper isn't closing completely. Great. So just that on the. And what about the electrical? Electrical's great. It was wired in the 70s, no problem. A couple of the wires don't have any grounding, or there's no GFCI near the water. Perfect. So just this, but it's not a safety issue. Nope, works fine. Awesome. I recap the house with those 4 components: roof, foundation, plumbing, electrical. That's what you recap with your client on the spot with the inspector there. So Alan, is it this? And if there is something going on with it, he's going to tell you, oh yeah, it's just this. Oh, it's just this for the roof? Yeah, it's just this for plumbing, just this for electrical. Perfect. So it's just these items. Yes, it's just those items. Once you have that, he leaves, you turn over to your client and you say, okay, great. So here's how we work with the request for repair. We look at everything that's health and safety first. Secondly, everything that's a code violation. And then thirdly, preferences. You tell the client how you look at an inspection. If you don't give the client the visual of how to look at it, they're going to look at everything and it's all going to be a problem. You must tell the client how to look at it. All right, client, we're going to look at health and safety, code violation, preference. What's health and safety? Well, if we look at the roof does have a shingle that's missing, which means water couldn't get inside of it. And if water gets inside consistently, that can turn into mold. Yeah, that's a health and safety concern. We should probably have that fixed. Well, hey, Gabe, there's also termite on the side of the house. Yeah, but that's normal. We live in California. There's termite on every single property, and it's not structural. So that's not really health and safety, but it's something that you definitely want to get fixed. So that's not something we're going to consider. Plumbing. Oh, the plumbing has this, that, and the other, whatever it might be. If it's something that's health and safety, we note it down with the client on the spot. Okay, so we want to get that shingle repaired. We want to get the leaky faucet repaired, and the electrical, we want to have the GFCI outlets near the water sources repaired. Those are all health and safety. Let's talk about any code violation. Well, yeah, the house was built in the 80s. So at the time, the property was built up to code at that time. And honestly, if there's a home that was built in 2022, in 2023, it will have code violations. Does it mean it's wrong? No, it doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it's out of code. What are the higher priority code violations that the inspector brought up? He might say something like, I don't know, X, Y, he might say something. If he says something, then we'll write that one down. Code violation might be, I don't know, GFCI, for example, GFCI outlet. GFCI needs to be near, I think it's 6 feet near a water source. That's the type of outlet, just for those who don't know. The outlet is a GFCI outlet, like a traditional, you plug in your electrical, your charger into it. But the difference is if water gets inside of that outlet, it trips and it stops right there. It stops running current to that outlet. It doesn't affect the entire breaker box. That's what a GFCI outlet is. So if there's a code violation like that, we'll address it. Lastly, preference. Oh man, I want the cabinets to be a different color. I want them to move the HVAC. Oh, I want to have whatever crazy things clients come up with. Those go on the 3rd tier. Once we discuss all that with the client, we give them our opinion. Hey, based on everything we saw here, we should really be looking at these items right here. And there's no secondary inspection. So there's a secondary inspection that we're going to schedule for the HVAC. But other than that, this is what we're working with. Sound good? The client's like, yeah, that works good. Perfect. I'll start working on that and I'll get the inspection for the HVAC scheduled. You take that information, send an email to your transaction coordinator. Hi, transaction coordinator, will you please create a request for repair with the following language? Seller to repair missing shingle. Seller to install GFCI outlets near all water. Seller to fix the leaky faucet in the bathroom, guest bathroom downstairs. Please create that. Do not send it out because we're having a secondary inspection done. Then you quickly get on the phone with an HVAC company, call them, have them scheduled immediately. And then you have that inspection taken care of. And as soon as it comes in, you deal with it. By day 2 or 3, you should be completely finished with your request for repairs. It should not go beyond that 3rd day mark. Do not get the inspection, review it afterwards, wait 2 days, client gets off work, send the request for repair. Before you know it, you're on day 5, day 7, day 9, going back and forth. Client's frustrated, seller's frustrated, you're beyond the contingency date. That's not how we act as professionals. As professionals, we act on the spot. Do not wait for tomorrow to do what you can do today. That's how you deal with the inspections. That's how you set the expectations. And this is how you move beyond it quickly and how you work with your inspector. Any final questions? Cool. No questions there? Perfect. Awesome. All right, cherish, post the training on the Slack channel. If you guys, we have Alan's contact information down there. Call him if you have any questions. If anything does come up afterwards, post it in Slack. We'll see you guys on the next call. God bless. Peace.
Thank you, guys.